thank you for joining the Caneberry Educational Conference as part of the 2021 Virtual Southeast Regional Fruit and Vegetable Conference. I'm Tom Dyson. I'm County Extension Director and Horticulture Agent with North Carolina State University and North Carolina Cooperative Extension. I'll be the moderator for this presentation today. As we begin, I want to thank Wish Farms for sponsoring the 2021 Caneberry Educational Conference. Pesticide CEU and CCA credits are available for most presentations offered during the live Southeast Regional Conference. Check the Pesticide CEU guide for a list of approved presentations and participating states. The Pesticide CEU guide is located in the Event Resources tab under the Media Player. The guide is also available at the Resources Center located on the main menu of the conference platform. Please note, pesticide credits will only be available for registered attendees and only during the live conference. Credits will not be available for on-demand viewing. There's a simple three-step process to receive pesticide CEU and CCA credits. First, go to the audience chat box located on the left side of your screen and type your first name, your last name, and the states for which you're requesting credits. Again, go to the audience chat box located on the left side of your screen and type your first name, last name, and states for which you're requesting credits. You'll need to do this at the beginning of every presentation to request CEU credits. The second step is to sign out at the end of every presentation. To sign out, go to the audience chat box and type your first name, last name, and the states for which you're requesting credits. You'll be reminded to sign out at the end of the presentation. So you'll need to both sign in at the beginning of each session and then again at the end of the session to get credit. The third step is to complete the pesticide CEU registration. You only have to complete this registration one time during the conference. This isn't required for every presentation. To access the pesticide CEU registration web link, open the Pesticide CEU guide on the Event Resources tab located under the Media Player. The Pesticide CEU registration web link is located on the front cover of the guide. This presentation is pre-recorded to reduce technical difficulties. Our speaker will be answering your questions live at the end of the presentation. You can submit a question at any point during this presentation by typing your question in the questions box and pressing send. Please don't forget to thank our 2021 conference sponsors and exhibitors by visiting the virtual trade show and featured products pavilion. And lastly, don't forget to join us each morning for coffee chats and each evening for networking. Check the conference agenda for details. Dr. John R. Clark is a distinguished professor of horticulture at the University of Arkansas. Research is his primary appointment, where he leads some components of the university's Division of Agriculture Fruit Breeding Program. Crops he works with include blackberries, table and wine grapes, and blueberries. He's developed many varieties of various fruits and has cooperative breeding activities at several locations in the United States, in addition to Europe, Mexico, South America, and Australia. He's worked in fruit breeding since joining the University of Arkansas in 1980. Among various other professional recognitions, Dr. Clark has been awarded the Distinguished Service Award of the North American Raspberry and Blackberry Association in 2012 and was inducted into the Arkansas Agriculture Hall of Fame in 2018. He earned his PhD at the University of Arkansas in 1983, his Master's of Science at the Mississippi State University in 1980. Today, his topic will be introducing Primark Horizon and other new Arkansas varieties. Comments? Dr. Clark?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, and it's good to be here to share with you at the Southeast Regional Fruit and Vegetable Conference. What a unique opportunity it is to sit here at home and tell stories about new blackberries. So I want to talk about Primark Horizon and a few other comments of new varieties. So just a few bullet points about Primark Horizon, the things you need to know. First off, it is primocane fruiting, that unique type of plant that we released a few years ago for the first time. It has the ability to fruit in the late summer and fall. It is thorny, although it does have reduced thorns compared to many varieties. The key thing I want to make sure you understand is a complement to Primark 45. Primark 45 is the most widely grown commercial primocane fruiting blackberry from Arkansas, and this is intended to complement it. So if 45 is working for you, consider this one. Primark Horizon has a huge floricane crop potential. It's really amazing the crop it can produce on floricanes in our environment in Arkansas. It offers a longer primocane fruiting crop potential, depending on where you are. We pick this thing on until the end of October often. And finally, it has some impressive berries. The key facts on development. The cross was made in 2008, selected in 2010, and it's been in research advanced trials a couple of times for a number of years. It was tested as APF 268, in case you run across that number somewhere. And we also had trials in Lincolnton, North Carolina, where Josh Beam was the key cooperator taking data. Near Hendersonville, North Carolina, at Mills River, at the NC State Mountain Research Center, and Karen Bladow was the person taking that data. And finally, Helen Thompson with Pacific Berry Breeding LLC in Watsonville, California. The berry, let's talk about the berry a minute. A picture there shows Primark Horizon on the right, Primark 45 on the left from floricane. So the berry averages 7.8 grams on the floricanes and 7.3 on the primocanes. Now that's interesting because usually primocane fruiting variety berry size is much smaller on the primocanes in Arkansas and in the South because of heat effects. So these being both quite large is promising and might suggest some degree of tolerance to heat, but I'm not guaranteeing that. These berries can range up to 10 grams or larger. It can be really big. And the primocane berries can be larger than the floricane berries, particularly in California. And at times we've seen this even in Arkansas and North Carolina. The berry, soluble solids averages about 10%. I generally have a 10% target minimum for a berry to release from our Arkansas program, and this one hits that mark. We do see a range of 9 to 11%, depending on how big the crop is, how mature the berries are, factors like that. Titratable acidity, which reflects the acidity of the berry, averages 0.9%, and it does have a range like you would expect with a blackberry, and it's in our reduced acidity range that I target in our Arkansas berry breeding program. The flavor is noted to be consistently good in most observations. Occasional tart berries have been noted, and this is particularly true when you have a heavy floricane crop, because the crop can be excessive, and when you have too many berries, not enough leaves, you always ends up with tart berries, no matter what the variety is. And there's one thing about this, and I want to note, is the berry shape is noted to vary in some years and some slightly curved. And if you look at those berries in my hand there, particularly the one on the far left, it has a little curvature to this. If you go to the grocery store and look at berries in a box, they're usually not uniform either. So if this is of great concern, note that. But it's not been a consistent year after year issue. I just mention it because I have seen it. Yield. This baby has a huge floricane crop potential, and it can be excessive. In other words, it can overproduce, especially in the year after planting. Let's think about this a minute. In Arkansas and in the South, you normally plant the plants. If they're tissue culture plants, you plant in April, maybe early May. In the first year, you would not be expected to get a crop in the South or in the East. California, you probably would. But we don't get a primocane crop that first year. So the next year, these canes have grown and they have excessive, huge floricane crop potential. And this one will make the berries. And so you have to be very aware of that. We've had this thing to yield over 30,000 pounds per acre in our research plots. I'm not guaranteeing that in the field. It's exceeded Natchez, which has been by far our most productive on a yield basis. Some of you have grown natchez, particularly in the deep south, and you have found that it will fruit itself to death. And so that is a concern. So we want to make sure that you are watching this with this, because this thing will grow and it can make too many berries, and that can affect quality. The floricane crop varies based on the primocane crop the prior year. What about the yield? The primocane yield has been anywhere from 10%, which is quite low, to 74% of the floricane yield just among the years that we've studied this. It generally ranged from 3,000 to 9,000 pounds per acre. So if you're not familiar with primocane fruiting in the south, we have issues with when the temperatures get above 90 or so. We can have concerns with the berries not developing well, the buds not developing, flowers not developing. We can have flower abortion. We can have impacts on flower shape also. So some years do better than others, largely because of how hot it gets. What about in North Carolina? Josh Beam has really provided some excellent data on this Primark Horizon over the years in the test plot near Lincolnton. And this year he reported some interesting findings. He had a total yield of over 4,000 flats per acre, which is about 4.5 pounds in a flat. And 2,500 of that was on the floricanes, 1,500 in the primocanes, and he noted it fruited through October. This figure here reflects a little bit of what Josh found at the site in North Carolina. The orange bar is Primark Horizon, the blue is Primark 45. And a key thing I want to mention here is Primark 45 data came from a separate planting that was not planted the prior year. It was a mature planting, whereas Primark Horizon were plants that had been planted the year prior in 2019. So you see this huge difference in floricane yield in the weeks of the 20s there. And that reflects what I said before about its yield potential. And then the floricane crop is over, and then the primocane crop begins in there in weeks 35 onward. Now, usually you would find Primark Horizon to start primocane fruiting a little earlier than 45, probably. But in this case, there was such a huge floricane crop that I believe that delayed the primocane crop coming on. But notice that the Primark Horizon continues fruiting at a higher level all the way to the right edge of the figure there, reflecting that longer potential season. The harvest period. The floricanes, the first harvest in Arkansas and at Clarksville at our fruit research station is about June the 12th, and largely with Washita. And it ripens a little later than Primark 45 as far as the start of the season. And it tends to fruit about 40, sometimes up to 50 days, depending on crop load and other factors. The primocane's first harvest averages August 4 in Arkansas, a few days earlier than Primark 45, and it can harvest for more than 60 days on into October or toward the end. Now, and that's interesting in this case. The picture there shows on the left Primark Horizon, Primark 45 on the right. Horizon is blooming on the primocanes a few days earlier, and that's reflected. So a little earlier on primocane first harvest, a little later on first floricane, sorry. Post-harvest, overall the reversion or the reddening of the drupes on Primark Horizon is very similar to 45. This is not a perfect berry that we hope to achieve or have achieved in our breeding as far as low reversion. It has reduced reversion in all our trials, but I know it's not what we would call resistant to this. You will see some reversion similar to 45. The firmness is really good in storage for over 7 days. In fact, the low leak and the retained firmness are among the best I've ever seen in our selections in the Arkansas program. So definitely has good post-harvest handling. You would probably see some reversion, much like 45. The plant. It's thorny. Now, the main canes have 45% lower thorn density than Primark 45. And you look at the picture, Horizon's on the left, 45 on the right. Now, that got me all excited because less thorns are good, but no thorns are best. But it's interesting, the lateral canes and the leaves, the backs of the leaves, tend to have similar thorn density to 45. So you'll notice less thorns, but there's still some of them that'll get you if you don't watch out. What about the plant? This baby will grow. those two slides there show a little about its growth potential. Now, on the upper slide, that's late August in primocane fruiting season. This had a single primocane tipping. Now, it probably needs a couple of tippings to help create more lateral branches and reduce that extension of the canes. And this needs to be developed. And there's been no tipping research with Primark Horizon done to say this is how you need to grow with it and manage it. So keep that in mind. As far as winter hardiness, it's been hardy to 1 Fahrenheit, the coldest we've gotten in our research location. And what about the chilling? Well, that hasn't been determined. I'm guessing around 300 hours. It might be less. And finally, that lower picture shows a little bit of its extended cane fruiting. Quite a few berries going way on back on that cane. Just a few comments about other varieties. Remember the new Ponca. I've shared about Ponca in meetings. I was not at Southeast last year, but I did it at NARBA, and it's been in our newsletters. So Ponca, if you haven't heard me talk about it, I kind of tell it as the one that I bring home. Boy, it's really a fabulous berry, and I remain pretty stingy with the Ponca berries in 2020. It was still good. And I did share a few with a few folks, but I wanted to be careful about how far they got away from me. It's just a nice berry. It's our sweetest berry from the program. If you want to know a little bit more about it, you can go and YouTube Ponca Blackberry and see the video that was made of it this summer. It has a new song to go along with the blackberry, so take a look at that. You'll see a little bit about the berries. Ponca is not one of these monster berries. It's about Washita size, more or less. It's got good post-harvest handling potential, as far as I can tell. It's sweet, it's early, tends to overlay with natches. It has an interesting characteristic of some of the secondary buds can break to extend the floricane season. It's only floricane fruiting, and it has some shorter internodes also. So Ponca was planted for the first time. It's here in 2020 to a limited extent. So I don't have any information about it from commercial production because there hasn't been any. But I will say that when I got through picking Ponca in probably mid-July, there was a little sadness because the best berry for the season was gone. And so I'm looking forward to the next crop of Ponca. And I hope that this one will be one you'll try. And those that got it planted, I hope it does you a lot of good. Also want to mention Caddo. Caddo was one I spoke about at Savannah 2 years ago, or in the meeting that was held in 2019. And Caddo is another floricane fruiter. It's pretty early. It has a large berry. It's firm. It has a very nice aromatic component to the flavor, something you'll really notice when you try it. Caddo is a quality berry, and I feel like it offers another berry in that Osage type season, Osage, and then going into Washita to try. One of the things that I've tried to do in variety development in the last 5 to 10 years, and even increasingly now, is be aware that different places need other varieties that might fit a certain environment. Or this year particularly, it was brought to my attention about varieties that ripen at a certain time, even if it's just a couple of weeks to fill in market gaps. And so I increasingly try to think about getting varieties out that give some diversity to choices for growers. So all these varieties come out. It's good to get excited about them, but try them at your place and see how they do. And I think what you'll find out is you'll sort through the ones that work really good at your site and some not the best. But that's farming, and that can be said probably about a whole range of different crops. You know, our Arkansas program has started in 1964, and we've made a lot of progress. There's a lot of progress to come, and we'll have new varieties on the horizon in the future. One last thing I want to mention is I'm in my last 2 years of working at the University of Arkansas for 2021 and 2022. I'm a part-timer now, drawing 3/4 pay. I hadn't quite got the working part down to 3/4, but the pay is solid at 3/4. And I'm going to do this 2 years, 21 and 22. Then I'll have my time in. That'll be 42 years. That's a pretty good dose. It's been fun, and Dr. Margaret Worthington will carry on after I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Clark, thank you. Our next speaker will be Arnold Caylor. We'll try to get his slides up here. There we go. Arnold Caylor worked for Auburn University as a research assistant on the main campus from 1987 to 1997. He worked with apples, peaches, blueberries, kiwis, strawberries, and blackberries. He served as director of the North Alabama Horticulture Research Station from 1997 to 2017. The focus of the research conducted at the station was vegetables, blackberries, blueberries, grapes, and muscadines. He retired in 2017 and started working with Jeremy Calvert, owner and operator of Calvert's Farm. He produces strawberries, blackberries, peaches, and vegetables, which are sold at his retail farm store and local farmers market. Our topic today will be blackberry cultivars at Calvert Farms. Mr. Caylor?
Thank you, Tom. It's good to be here, and it's going to be unusual to be working in the house instead of in front of a live audience. But what I'm going to share with you today is some of the cultivars that we looked at Jeremy's farm. I put a demonstration plot several years ago and just got Jeremy to try it. Strawberries is his main crop. And he's a small grower. He has about 50 acres of fruits and vegetables, and it's all marketed directly to the consumer. So quality is the main concern. And what I'm going to do today is we established this newest planting in 2019, and we harvested them this past summer, and just share some of our results with that and some of our observations that we observed with these different cultivars. And some of these might not be a fit for a commercial operation, but they might have a place for a small direct market operation. And with that, I'll start out with our earliest cultivar, which is Primark Freedom. We tried that when it first came out, and we really liked this berry. And one of the main selling points of this berry is it ripens 3 weeks earlier than anything else that we have out there. And so we're on the market early, and then oftentimes we'll have overlap with strawberries and some of our early peaches, and the demand is good. And so we like it because of this reason. Also, it has a large berry size, and the berries most years have good flavor. This past year we had a wet year, and it was cool, and the flavor was not quite as good, but most years it's pretty good. The seeds are not too large. They're like some varieties can be, such as Caylor or something like that. And we had high yields, and we produced mainly for the floor cane. We didn't try to produce any on the prima canes because it just gets too hot for us. But we had started out with 72 plants, and we got over 200 gallons off of those 72 plants, which we thought was pretty good. Now, some of the cons that we've observed with Primark Freedom is we haven't quite learned how to handle the prima cane aspect of it. If we don't tip it back and keep those flower buds tipped off, those new prima canes die back on us. And so it's been a learning process there, and we feel like we're making progress there, and hopefully next year we'll do everything correct. Also has is very vigorous grower, has very stiff canes, and so you have to be careful when you're handling it because it does tend to break up some. So this is May the 20th was when we started harvesting the Freedom. Then next to get ripe is Natchez. We really like this berry also. Natchez is a large berry. It's very productive. The flavor is good for us. And what we like about it is the plant structure is very good. It's easy to work with. It's easy to developed the new Primark canes for the floor canes the following year. And we don't have very many white druplets, which can be a problem in some years. That was the other thing about Freedom that I didn't mention is we see very little white druplets in that berry. And so for Natchez, we saw very few also. It has good storage for fresh market. And most of the time, we sell these berries within 3 days of harvest. We'll sell out probably 70 to 80% the first day we harvest. Then usually we get rid of the remainder in the second day after we've harvested them. So that we don't keep them in storage as long. And so the berry can be a little bit softer than would be for a commercial operation. The cons that we've seen with Natchez has been that it produces for us fewer Primark canes, and I think that goes back to what John has mentioned in previous talks, that Natchez is very productive, and so it tends to just overfruit itself, and so it doesn't produce as many Primark canes. But we do have good lateral bud break when we tip them back, and so that helps out a lot. Next one that we have is Primark Traveler. We tried that. We just tried several different varieties here, and we like Primark Traveler. It comes in just a little bit after Natchez for us. Here again, it's a large berry. It has good flavor, and we have good yields. Here again, we don't manage it for a Primark cane harvest. We do it for the floor cane harvest because that's when our main season is. And there again, the seeds are not too large. They're really not that objectionable. And we also have very few white druplets with this one also. None of the berries, we don't normally keep them long enough to see the red druplet revision, so that's not been an issue for us. Here again with this Primark Traveler, has been learning how to manage a Primark cane producing berry, what to do with that Primark cane. That's something that we're trying to get a handle on. One of the other things that we kind of think is a con is not necessarily a bad thing, but it seems like it produces an excess of Primark canes, and we have to do a lot more thinning out with that. Our next one was Osage. This is a good berry, has very good flavor. We like this one quite a bit. The berry size is pretty good, and it tends to be more round than conical, which that's not a big issue with us. Small seed, but here again goes back to the flavor, and this is what we're selling is quality, and it has very good flavor. We saw a few white druplets, but not very many. We have good storage out of it. We also have good good Primark cane production for the crop for the following years. Some of the cons are just maybe a little bit smaller berry, but overall it's not too small. And other than that, we don't have any real negatives to associate with it, and it does overlap with some of our other varieties. But Jeremy wanted to extend the season for as long as possible, and so that's the reason why we tried so many different cultivars and just see what fits. And he is in the process of expanding his blackberry acreage. We also have Washita, which has been around for a pretty good while. Here again, it has very good yields and good flavor and good storage life. One of the things that we do see with Washita that we don't see with any of the early cultivars I've mentioned is that early in the season, when the berries first start getting ripe, we'll see some white druplets, and that'll persist. We'll see that for maybe the first 2 or 3 harvests, and then after a while, it just tends to go away. We don't really know what the reason for that, but it seems to go away, and so it's not that big of an issue. But you do have some white druplets with this cultivar, and here again we have large fruit, and it's a good producer, and we like this a lot. The next one that we tried was Sweetie Pie. this was not originally in our planting plans, but a friend of mine mentioned this one, so we were looking at it, so we tried it. And Sweetie Pie is very sweet. It's a very high quality berry, and but the size of the fruit's very large. But one of the things the main things that we found wrong with it is it had excessive white druplets. The fruit was firmness was very soft. It didn't hold up, and after a rainfall, it was just basically mush, even for a fresh market operation. This was the only cultivar out of all of them that we saw mites on, and so we just pulled the trigger fairly early on this cultivar, and we pulled it out. We're going to replace this with Primark Freedom, and we might try that Primark Horizon, since that was a new release. We also will probably replace it with Caddo and Ponca. We also had, in the older planting, we had Arapaho. It was good firm berry and a good storage life, but the fruit size was smaller than what we were really looking for, and had good primocane production. To us, the flavor was just average. It wasn't anything special about it, and actually the growth of it was it was not as vigorous as the other cultivars, and so we pulled this one up out of the production, and we no longer have it. But we tried it just to see what it would do. One of the ones that we really like, and this is for later production for us, is Caddo. This photo here doesn't do it justice for what we saw later on in the season, but flavor-wise, it was excellent. I'm waiting for Ponca, because if Ponca's better than Caddo, then it's going to be out of this world. But the fruit size was very large. We did see a little bit of white druplet, but it was not very much and not very prevalent. So it's something that you can live with. And then we had good primocane production. The plant structure and the architecture of the plant was very good. We developed a lot of good lateral branches, which is more of a fruiting surface, and so we really like Caddo. And the only con, and it's really not a con, is I thought, and Jeremy thought too, that the size of the seed were a little bit larger than some of the other cultivars. But to me, I grew up eating muscadines and chewing up seeds and eating watermelon seeds, so it's not a big deal. You just learn how to deal with it, and if you get one caught in your teeth, you just get it out. But anyway, Caddo is a very good fruit. One that we're really excited about, we planted, as soon as we could get hold of the plants, we planted Ponca. We just planted it. We got it late in the year, so we didn't get it out as early as we'd have liked to have. But based on what I've seen from John's reviews of it and his YouTube video, we have high expectations for this cultivar, and we're going to increase our planting this year. And the main three, as I mentioned earlier, was Ponca, Caddo, and the Freedom are three of the ones that we're going to add to it, and we'll probably add some of the Horizons. One that I don't have a picture of that we had in our planting was Chester. It's an older cultivar. It's been around a long time. And the only reason we included Chester was because it was so late. We were trying to extend that season out for as long as possible. And but Chester has a lot of problems. It is very difficult to harvest compared to the others. The cap on it tends to stick with it, and it was just more difficult. It's very vigorous berry, and the fruit size was fairly small compared to the others, and so we just went ahead and made the decision and pulled it out at the end of this growing season this year, because we had enough overlap with Caddo and Chester that we're going to let Caddo take the place of Chester, and when Caddo's through, we're going to be done with the season. We did look at Vaughn, which was a North Carolina release. It's a good berry, it's very productive. At first, we thought we didn't include it in our new planting because we thought the fruit size was a little bit too small for us. But this year in the older planting, when we harvested Vaughn, the fruit size was better. And so we're going to take a second look at this, and we might add some more Vaughns, because for us, Vaughn ripens at the end of the season, and that extends our season out. And that's what we're looking for, because we have good sales potentials for all the berries that we can grow. And this in this picture, it just shows the comparison of the different fruit. This is not a typical picture of Caddo. We were really looking for a ripe variety Caddo to have a picture of. This is actually probably more on the size of the sweetie pie there. Caddo was a large berry for us. But you can see all of them are fairly good, and we're actually looking forward to blackberries. And Jeremy's glad that he planted some blackberries, and profit potential is very good for blackberries in our area. And I think that concludes my talk. If anybody has any questions, we'll be glad to entertain them at this point.
Our next presenter, Dr. Reza Rafie, is known for his passion for growing berries in Virginia. Dr. Rafie is a horticulture extension specialist with the Virginia Cooperative Extension at Virginia State University in horticulture, berries, ginger, turmeric, and niche crops, and has devoted nearly 15 years to researching and promoting berry production. He's been an unrelenting advocate for educating small farmers and growers on the economic potential of growing specialty crops like blueberries and blackberries.
I'm Reza Rafie from Virginia State University. Today I'll share with you the result of an evaluation of 4 floricane blackberry cultivars for their yield and fruit quality in Central Virginia. Cultivars under this study included Twilight, Galaxy, Eclipse, and ORUS 4670-1. This last cultivar has not been given a commercial name yet. These cultivars were developed by a team of scientists from USDA and Oregon State University, led by Chad Finn. All of these cultivars are thornless, are considered semi-erect, and although they were developed in the western part of the country, they are heavily influenced in their breeding development by the Arkansas blackberry cultivars. Usually the western blackberry cultivars do not do well when grown in the eastern part of the country. Therefore, Chad and his team decided to develop new cultivars so they can also be grown in the eastern U.S. This slide is the breeding diagram and crosses that were made for the development of the Twilight cultivar. We can see the crosses that were made with Ouachita, Triple Crown, Navajo, and even at the earliest stages of development, we can see the NC 3735-12, which is from the North Carolina breeding program. This is a statement published in the Hort Science Journal by Chad, indicating again the influence of Ouachita Triple Crown in the development of Twilight cultivar. In fact, he stated that Twilight is 7/8 eastern U.S. blackberry and only 1/8 western blackberry ancestry. So that's really assuring that these cultivars have potential to be grown in the eastern of the United States. Another cultivar is Eclipse. which was selected from crosses made using eastern U.S. blackberry cultivars, including Triple Crown and Chester. Also, Illini Hardy, which is a cold hardy cultivar developed in the Midwestern U.S. With marginal fruiting quality, was used in the development of Eclipse. The pedigree of Galaxy cultivar is similar to Eclipse. However, in our high tonal evaluation of these cultivars, the Eclipse cane development and lateral branches appear to be more robust and vigorous than Galaxy, but Galaxy produced more fruit per plant. The pedigree of ORUS 4670-1 is not publicly available, but we imagine probably their parents are similar to, and the crosses that they were made are similar to the other three cultivars that we previously discussed. A little bit of information about the cultivar trial at Randolph Farm, Virginia State University. We received the tissue culture plants in April 2019, April 21st, 2019, 10 plants for each cultivar. All plants were transplanted in 1 gallon containers and kept the plants in a greenhouse until mid-May of that year. Then 5 plants from each cultivar were planted in a 27 feet wide by 48 feet long tunnel. The other 5 plants from each cultivar were planted in the field. The challenge due to the COVID-19 in data collection was we had limited access to the farm during the initial harvest. Therefore, data was collected per cultivar and not per replication as we originally intended to do. Also, field plants were severely damaged by deer, and therefore production data was not taken during the 2020 production season. In this slide, you see the step-by-step development from planting to harvesting. We had 2 rows of planting. Each row had 2 cultivars, and each cultivar had 5 plants. Each row initially was covered by landscape fabric. We eventually covered the entire floor of the high tunnel. The distance between the 2 rows were 8.5 to 9 feet apart. The distance between plants in each row were 4 feet apart. We learned that the 9 feet distance definitely was not enough. The harvest started in June 24th of 2020. This slide is a summary of the total berry harvested from 5 plants for each cultivar during different harvest dates. To fit all the information from harvested dates in this graph, we added fruits harvested within 5 days as one data point. For example, the first harvest is the sums of all fruit harvested between June 24 to June 28 for twilight. This graph shows that twilight continuously produced fruits from the beginning to the end of the season. Galaxy had the highest production during July. ORUS 467-1 was a late producing cultivar, had the highest production in August. Eclipse cultivar, with the exception of July 6 to 11, it was outperformed by all other cultivars. This graph shows the total berry harvested in pounds per plant for each cultivar during the production season. Twilight produced the highest yields of 16.6 pounds per plant of berry. The next highest producing cultivar was Galaxy, which produced 12.7 pounds per plant. Eclipse produced 6.5 pounds per plant, the lowest when compared with other cultivars. This slide shows how vigorous the new primocane and lateral branches are. This lateral had been pruned once before, but they completely cover the floricane. Definitely the space between rows and plants must be more than 9 feet between rows and 4 feet between plants in the same row. One problem that we observed was that in all cultivars, some fruit, well, an estimated 2 or 3% of the harvested fruit, the base of the fruit did not fully ripen, as you see in this slide. At this point, we don't know what may have caused this. These are the new primocane in all cultivars. They really look good. We are excited about looking at them in 2021, and also we are going to look at looking at the bricks and other nutritional values of each cultivar.